Hi everybody. Well, I also wanted to apologize for not being there in person, but I assure you that this video will be just as good. And it might even be better because I'm a little less nervous because I don't have you guys in person. But just as Perry said, I'll be talking about some of the programs in place within the child welfare system, and I'll be starting off with foster care. And I just want to make a note that if you see me sort of looking a little bit down, it's because I'm looking at my screen at some of my notes, because I have tons of information and it's hard to memorize it all. So, foster care is alternative care for children whose parents are unable to adequately care for them, and foster care children either live in a group home with other foster care children and staff members or at the home of an individual who has become a certified foster parent. Foster care, just like protective services, do not have a centralized authority, so it means that states were implementing their own policies. However, unfortunately, states were not doing enough to ensure that children were being well taken care of within the system. So, for example, there were some studies in the 1970s that showed that 70% of children in foster care were in foster care for more than a year, when in fact foster care is intended to be short-term and temporary. It was discovered that and thought that the cause of this long-term placement was that states were not adequately funding reunification programs. So there wasn't like any like programs in place or enough programs in place where the child can go back to their home and like work on like the process of reunifying themselves with their family and whatever they need to do to solidify their relationship with their family again. So as a result of these discouraging findings surrounding how the foster care system was being managed, permanency planning was placed at the core of the Adoption Assistance and Welfare Act. Permanency planning refers to the systematic process of carrying out within a brief, limited period of time a set of goal-directed activities designed to help children live in families that offer continuity of relationships with nurturing parents or caretakers and the opportunity to establish lifetime relationships. So, in other words, the goal of foster care is to make sure that children end up back with their biological families, or they get adopted into a loving family. So as a child welfare worker under the foster care system, you or whoever wants to be a child welfare worker basically would just make sure that the family, the biological family, is provided with the programs, the resources, the skills, the checkups necessary in order for that child to reunify themselves with the family, or the welfare worker would find a good match for the child to be adopted into a family that would provide the child with the stability the child needs. So, even though the number of children who were in foster care dropped dramatically after this shift towards permanency planning, social workers were simply putting children back into families without enough necessary supportive resources and programs. Therefore, a revolving door effect took place in which the children were placed into foster care, then they were placed back home, taken out of foster care, placed back home, and then back into the foster care system because they're not provided with the tools needed to solve the issues within their household that had gotten them into the system in the first place. So since we are on the topic of permanency planning, it's important to note that even though the best outcome for foster children would be for them to either be reunited with their families or to be adopted, about 25,000 foster children per year simply age out of the system. Unfortunately, research has shown that the future of these children is usually grim in comparison to non-foster youth in areas such as educational attainment, housing, interactions with the criminal justice system. So I put up some statistics on my slides that talk about a little bit about this. So for example, 1/5 will become homeless after the age of 18, only 58% will graduate high school by age 17, 71% of young women are pregnant, and at the age of 24, only half are employed. These negative outcomes affect everybody and cost society a lot of money. Fortunately, plenty of states have decided to extend foster care services to youth beyond the age of 18 because it's pretty much generally understood that the future of these youth is more likely to be better if the services are extended. So an example of this shift that some states have taken towards foster care extension is the Fostering Connections to Success and Increasing Adoptions Act, which was signed by President Bush in 2008. Before this act, states would have to provide all of the funding necessary to continue funding a child or providing services to a foster care child beyond the age of 18. But thanks to this act, the states can continue to receive federal funding for their foster youth after the age of 18 under Title 4E, which is an entitlement grant under the Social Security Act, but only if the youth are completing a secondary education or program leading to an equivalent credential, enrolled in an institution which provides post-secondary or vocational education, participating in a program or activity designed to promote or remove barriers to employment, employed for at least 80 hours per month, or if they're incapable of doing all of the above things I mentioned because of a medical condition. So an example of how this act is being implemented and how states are extending their foster care services is the Fostering Connections to Success Act passed in California in 2010. So under this act, non-minor dependents or foster youth above the age of 18 can be eligible to live in an eligible placement location, and these dependents would have to sign an agreement that they'll be able to reside in an eligible placement location, that they're going to work with a social worker and think of like a plan that they need to a plan that they need to follow in order to get housing, in order to meet educational goals, and this plan is called the Transitional Living Plan. So some of the places that the foster youth can live in are at the home of a relative, a non-related extended family member, licensed foster family home, a certified foster family agency home, or the home of a non-related guardian, or they can even live in a supervised setting such as an apartment or college dorms. And two very important aspects of this act is that the act took in a phased-in approach. So in other words, foster care services were extended gradually. In 2010, the extension age was till 19, and then by 2014, it wasn't until now that the age was extended to the age of 21. Another important thing about this act is that foster youth could get out of it, like they could get out of the system if they feel like they don't need the services anymore. That's fine. They can just choose to get out of the system. So I'm going to go back to the topic of permanency planning, and I'm going to talk about adoption and permanency planning, because really adoption is like the main goal. Besides, like if children can't get reunified with their biological family, then the next best goal is to get the children adopted. And in order to aid in the adoption of hard to adopt children, such as minorities, older children, and children with disabilities, the Adoptive and Assistance and Child Welfare Act passed in 1980 provided individuals with monthly subsidies to incentivize people to adopt children. Sorry, I'm a little sick. So a really controversial topic in regards to adoption is whether children should be adopted into a home that is reflective of their